What do you think is harder, to make people realize that crypto is the future of finance, or to deal with the medical system in the Philippines?
I mean, people watching this are probably like, what? That's a very tricky question, to be honest. I'm going to have to go with, getting people to understand that Bitcoin is the future. I know I just kind of like paraphrase that, but it's even harder than dealing with like a life or death issue in the Philippines at this point. So we've got work to do.
Well, what do you think it is for, I've been interested in crypto for many, many years. A lot of people have been. I'm spent the last bull run completely fascinated with it and spending hours and hours and hours on my computer, and I'm still a little bit lost. So what do you think is the main barrier of entry for the normal average person to get involved in crypto?
Well, first off, what I just want to say is what they say in the industry is that if you've been here for 2 full cycles, that's when you'll truly experience success. So congratulations on making it through 1. And I think that the barrier to entry is kind of like a mixture of things. It's the lack of understanding of finance in general. This is a topic that I discussed at length with a visionary, a guy called Yatsu. He's the founder of Animoca Brands, one of the biggest investing firms in the world for gaming, iGaming, AI. And he just thinks that there's a lack of fundamental understanding of what finances are and that people get trapped in the system not understanding it. So we go from that to like introducing a whole new financial system. And it's like we skipped a step. And so people are just kind of A, confused by that, and B, confused by what they see in the news and the narratives, that the doom and the gloom and all the things that they pay attention to that isn't actually what's happening. So they don't have the long-term vision. They're just getting fed the short-term vision, maybe the exclusionary terms. They're intimidated by it. So many factors. And at the end, it boils down to, okay, I'm gonna come back to this. I'll get back to it later. They push it down the road, right?
Yes, I think the fundamental knowledge of finance, for most people, I mean, we could go on about our school systems and the fact that they probably should be teaching us that from day one. But I believe it's all done on purpose, and we shouldn't know about finance, because once you know the rules of the game, it's not actually that difficult to play. But if you don't even know the rules of the financial system, like you said, what we have already, then how are you going to learn a whole new system, and how are you going to do that? So for anyone trying to introduce themselves to finance in general, what sort of advice would you have for them?
I think I would say, well, just think about the system. Let's talk about that for a minute, like the college university system. I went to college, a university, and it's this whole thing where, okay, it's this competition to who gets the highest grades, who gets the best recommendations, the best schools, then where will you be placed for the best businesses, where you'll then consequently be trading your time for money, and you'll be stuck in this rat race forever. And what Yatsu actually described it as is the moment that you finish that part of your life, you enter into the rest of your indentured servitude as somebody who is, essentially owned by the system. And that's what Bitcoin is essentially devised to counter, apart from many other things like inflation and the messed up monetary system. It's devised where people can actually go back to what is really, truly important in this world, which is fundamental freedom as a human. And that's in financial aspects, that's privacy, that's transaction, that's business, it's everything. So I think people just need to open their minds up a little bit get educated about what actually is it and why does it matter first.
So I think I completely agree. But then if you look at the direction that things are going, this is my fear. I know a little bit about crypto, like a little bit. My fear is the more I get to learn about crypto and the more I get to learn about control mechanisms by the government and everyone getting involved, when you start moving towards like CBDCs, crypto-backed digital currencies, people don't know what it is, that you start moving towards that, like my fear is if then everything goes on the blockchain and our currency is converted into only being crypto, then surely the government have total control over my spending.
That's a really valid fear, and I'm glad you bring up CBDCs. We do not like CBDCs. I'm just going to put that out there. That is something that is so anti-crypto, and they're not the same. So you can opt out of the CBDC system. That is like a centralized digital currency that the government is controlling. And they're already doing that in China. In fact, they're adding a social currency to it, a social ID where actually they'll keep track of what you spend and maybe cap certain spendings. Or if you don't do enough carbon, little carbon footprint, then you can't do this or you can't do that. So CBDCs actually, we had some good news passed by a crypto legislation that said, they're not going to be, they want to pass a bill to make them illegal in the US. So that's the first step in like, wow, okay, maybe we're going to trend a different direction for once. But yeah, they have nothing to do with each other really. And Bitcoin is still Bitcoin. It's still its own entity. And they're two separate things. One is freedom and one is servitude.
Basically. And I'm glad you brought up China and everything going on there because, I don't want to get super political. We're talking about finance, although it kind of is the same thing. But when you look at China, for me, the control they have over their populace and their people and now the financial control they have, I always feel like we're kind of it feels like right now we're veering more and more and more in that direction and hopefully it will swing the other way. But that is the fear, right? I don't know if you've seen the episode of Black Mirror where they have
the
Black Mirror episode when they have the social score. I would do very badly on that because I have an abrasive personality and I normally leave people in a bit of they hate me, so I don't think I'd get 5 stars very often. So then you're in a certain level of society and all that sort of stuff. But you brought up like the carbon and carbon emissions. I feel, again, if the government has control over our money, and I fly around the world all the time, you do as well, traveling constantly, and my carbon's high. I would be the first person to be shut down and have to stay at home if that was where the system went. I feel like, how does the average person take control over themselves rather than getting caught up in that system? They said the rat race, going to university, then after that working a lifetime of servitude to something, to a company, to whatever it's going to be. How do I make sure that I don't fall into that trap?
Well, I think it involves taking a calculated risk, at the point that you are at in your life now, to think, all of the internet's most brilliant minds have gravitated toward this Web3 world, toward this crypto world, the AI world, blockchain. And that's for a reason, and I want to go back to Charles Hoskinson is one of my favorite people in the space. He's the founder of Cardano. And he always talks about fundamental human rights, fundamental freedoms, economic agency and identity, and being able to control your business and not be shut down or have the fear of constantly being censored and things like that. So I think that it's time to take a calculated risk, to stand up and say, do I want my life to look like this? Do I want to fall into this circle? Or do I want to fight for those fundamental freedoms of what it means to be human? And that's kind of what it is. And part of taking that giant leap, which it is for a lot of people, is getting educated. And that sounds so like, oh yeah, I get educated, I don't want to. But there's different ways. I mean, you just start digging in, and whatever catches your eye, you go further. You find people you like that talk about it. I know you're involved in the space. What got you interested?
Making money. I was originally actually interested by making money, of course, and I actually joined a group that were involved in crypto, and I learned an insane amount about it. But then it did come down to that freedom, because I see the future. I see 10 years down the line, maybe not even 10 years down the line. I see the fail of the West. I see the dollar failing. I see the pound failing. And then what's going to replace it? That's my fear. I feel, again, overnight, the banks could close, we could lose access to our money, and then all of a sudden we have no choice but to move on to this new CBDCs. I mean, I'm glad. I didn't know that they were illegal in America, so that's amazing news.
Well, they're not illegal yet, but they passed a bill that they want to make them illegal. That's a great step.
That's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
So if they're going to make them illegal, fantastic, because I feel like any day now we could just get shut down. Any day, honestly, I feel like I'm living in fear all the time about this. And because of that and the freedom I understand the blockchain gives you and I understand the crypto gives you, I became more, at first I was investing just to make money. Now I'm investing more a little bit with my heart as well, hoping that this is going to come true and this is going to be the future of the world.